since 2020, I've booked about 3,000 interviews
Wow,
for
that's awesome.
hundreds of entrepreneurs, investors, and thought leaders. So that was kind of like the journey into all of it.
All right, welcome back to the studio series. I am one of your hosts, Gabe Francis. Today we are joined by our special guest, Spencer Carpenter. Spencer, welcome to Westchester Studios.
Hey man, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. So we can just get right started and talk about your background a little bit. So can you just tell me about like your journey with the podcasting industry and how you got started into it?
Yeah, so I started off in the music industry. And I started booking concerts in my hometown when I was 15. And I then went out to, Lancaster, Pennsylvania and ran some small record labels there. And we had a music conference that we handled and a music venue out in Harrisburg. But pretty much all along the way, I was dealing on either side of talent representation. And while I ran all of these like small businesses, the thing I really wanted to be was a tour booking agent, which I did, but even in an age of like remote work, if you're not in New York, LA, or Nashville, at least in the beginning stages to kind of build your network base, it is kind of hard to just make it work in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So there's only so much we could really do. And in 2020, I was managing a club in Atlantic City for the head of the Bowery, which was like Franklin Music Hall, and they did the Mann Center at the time and Underground Arts and stuff like that. And just with everything shut down, I realized there were a bunch of people stuck at home. And even when like back to work came, that didn't necessarily mean that concerts would be back, because like you could go back to the office, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you could gather hundreds or thousands of people together.
Right.
So it was really unknown when live music would come back. And so this kind of just started as like a side thing, because I was just stuck at home, which was like, there are tons of other people stuck at home that are used to going to conferences or expos or hosting meetups or something like that, and they can't do anything. And a podcast is kind of like an entrepreneur or a business professional's stage to perform. If they're not a keynote speaker or something, they could still get on this stage. And so a buddy of mine was like, you should be like a booking agent for podcasting. And I was like, oh, I could totally do that. And just quickly did a Google search. There are only a few companies that did it. And a lot of them really came at it from like a marketing perspective, or maybe they were formerly in PR. And when I found podcast, I was listening to like a lot of real estate podcasts, and I thought that everyone I was listening to was like Richard Branson or Mark Cuban level celebrity. And it turned out they're really just Joe Schmo investor, but they were really good at what they did. They were willing to give the information away. And I was like, even though this person has like a $50 million real estate portfolio, he probably doesn't have someone really booking them on podcast. I should go tell them to hire me to do that. And so it kind of snowballed from there. Turns out it wasn't just people in real estate that needed this. Kind of people across tons of industries were interested in something like this. And so, since 2020, I've booked about 3,000 interviews for
that's awesome.
Hundreds of entrepreneurs, investors, and thought leaders. So that was kind of like the journey into all of it. I bring to the table is I mostly work with entrepreneurs, and investors, and thought leaders. And there are a few different like niche agents out there. Some work in the health space, some specifically work with women entrepreneurs, some work with authors, that type of thing. And I have a wide range of people I work with, but because I've done so many different types of business, and like all of my friends are entrepreneurs, growing up, I've been exposed to a lot of different fields like marketing and sales and industries. And so like I can kind of pull all of that together to craft like what I think are unique topics. And just a way that, maybe someone that just has like a communications degree that just
Mhm.
works for a podcast, but they wouldn't know what's interesting or what's not.
Right.
And so that is one thing I feel I bring to the table for my clients is being able to say, okay, I understand that this topic, me as somebody that doesn't know much, I find this interesting. Also, I can kind of put myself in the shoes of somebody that does know more, even though I don't, and be like, okay, but let's do like 3 topics that are kind of surface level, and then let's do 3 topics that are more like expert level, so that when we book you on a variety of shows, you can kind of attack all of them. So like a show that is more sophisticated marketers, and it's a
Mhm.
marketing conversation, you know,
Right.
you can say something that's really unique. Whereas if it's just more of a small business podcast, what's a more surface level conversation that somebody that doesn't know much about marketing can really digest? And so I work with my clients to kind of put all of that together, as well as like just what's a compelling bio. Like
Mhm.
lots of people, when they're asked to make a bio, include something about how like when they're not working, they love coaching their kids like soccer and like going to the beach, and like that's just not helpful in a bio when pitching to a pod, unless it's a
Yeah.
parenting podcast.
Right.
It doesn't do anything, and so I kind of bring that expertise in like what to cut out, what to leave in, how to make it concise and straightforward, while packing the biggest punch.
Wow. That is super cool. So now that you've been doing it for a bit, what would you say are some of like the biggest trends that you've been seeing in the podcasting space from your perspective?
I mean, podcasting as a whole, definitely more video.
Mm-hmm.
In-person stuff like this is getting bigger. There's lots of debate around whether or not just doing this and putting on YouTube is a podcast or not, because it's
Mhm.
not RSS based. I don't really know how much that matters, but there's a lot of debate in the podcasting space about it. But as much as that is a big trend, is more people wanting to do the in-person, high-quality video studio experience, I still have tons of clients that are like, I don't have the time for that. Like, I don't have the time to travel. Like this,
Yeah.
I want to do this virtually. That's
Yeah.
what makes this a time efficient medium for me. So like, is that growing? Absolutely. Will people invest in that? You know, the video component, yes, but there are just still tons of people that are like, I just want to be able to do this from my home.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about the medium, is it can kind of be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that totally makes sense too. I think it's like totally across the board. Like,
Yeah.
you know, some people are comfortable with doing Zoom podcasts, you
Yep.
know, and that's just how it works for some people.
Yep.
So going into, I'm curious about this. So what are some common challenges that you face, like trying to like book guests for your clients?
I mean, common issues I run into is, so to be clear, while I do book guests for some podcasts, my main thing is I represent the guest, trying to get them on shows.
Right. Okay.
And just like lots of people, obviously they value the biggest podcast.
Mm-hmm.
They have a hard time valuing the smaller podcast. And that's it's like they understand they're not going to get on Rogan at this point,
Right.
but they still say, well, can you get me on something that's just like a single step down? You
Mhm.
know, like I don't even want to say Jay Shetty's like a step down. It's not by any means. Or like Lewis Howes, or I don't know, maybe something in Barstool, if like they were something that kind of crossed over there, or like
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey, whatever. They just don't need guests. Like they don't need help.
Yeah. Right.
And you know, one of the things about podcasts is, as a listener, as a host, you're building rapport with a listener.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the listener, like you don't know the listener yourself,
Yeah.
they get to know you. And so I think there are a lot of people now that have been exposed to a ton of podcasts, and they've heard so much of the host story and what they're interested in, and they're like, well, I'm also interested in that. We could connect on that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not entirely true.
Yeah.
You know, like you can say I want to be on this show, but like, have you given a reason for the host to want you on?
Yeah, right.
Like, just because you want it doesn't mean it's a fit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also important to understand that like every show has its own criteria, or they might switch up their avatar of like who's the ideal guest every 6 months or something. Like,
Oh,
for
okay. Wow.
example, like I work with Tom Bilyeu's team a little bit. He has the show Impact Theory, and he was the founder of Quest Nutrition, but he's no
Oh,
longer
wow.
that owner. He sold that business.
Okay.
And as of late, his podcast has been focused on AI and like affordability and biohacking and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in the past, he wanted to talk to like high performing leaders like him. So like he kind of like changes based on what he's interested in. And so what might have been a fit 6 months ago isn't a fit now, but maybe it will be again in 6 months. And it's hard to explain to people sometimes. Is that like you're just not the right fit for the show right now, even though you think you are.
Yeah.
And so clients come to me and they say, can you get me on these 10 shows? And they are never handing me a list of 10 small shows,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
They're handing me a list of 10 big shows. And even though they say, I understand if you can't get this, it's just my dream list. Secretly, that is the bar they're setting.
Yeah.
And it's just not likely to happen like that. Maybe we could get one or two. I've booked dozens and dozens of like top 100 podcasts.
Oh,
I've
that's
had
cool.
people on Bigger Pockets Real Estate Podcast, which is the biggest real estate. I've had people on Motley Fool Money, which is one of the biggest investing. I've had people on Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast, which is #1 in comedy. But that doesn't mean I can do it for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's one of the harder things, is really just managing expectations. And that then ties into helping people understand that like you don't have to be on the biggest podcast for it to be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, most of the time, being on a big podcast means you've just talked to a diluted audience.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
More often than not.
Yeah.
It's if you are in like, let's just say you're a financial planner and your goal is to get in front of people that possibly need financial planning services, because they do a variety, they have a variety of avatars that they go after. It's better to be on a show that's small with 100 of the right listener than on something with 100,000 of the wrong listener. Being on that big show, bragging rights, great for SEO, it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if you're actually looking for ROI, being on the smaller niche show makes way more sense.
Yeah.
And it's just, most people don't think about it like that.
Yeah, no, that is a really great way to think about it. So I'm curious then, so what are some like important criteria that you do look for when looking for shows to get your guests on?
Yeah, so I always tell people you don't need me to get booked on the podcast with 10 interviews and 2 5-star reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that podcast is likely looking for guests. Now, if you're a financial planner and it's called the Financial Planning Podcast and it's small, for SEO purposes, we should do it. But that's not like what people come to me for. So I have to look for a variety of things. Like, download numbers are not public knowledge. And most people don't know that. They think that everybody knows the reach of every show, and they don't. I pay for tools that give me kind of an idea. But even then, sometimes it might say like, this show has a minimum of 10,000 monthly downloads, and on the high end, it's like 25.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, okay, that's great. If whether it's 10 or 25, that's great. But you're telling me the difference there could be 150%.
Yeah.
So you don't even know.
Yeah.
And so I really don't focus on like, what is the specific reach? Again, if I got my client in front of it on the right show with 100 of the right person, that's a win.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond that, it's like, okay, does it have 25-star reviews? And that's so minimal, but to anybody that has a business, they know that it's like pulling teeth, getting people to leave a review on Google.
Yeah.
All of my friends are
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. I still had to text them all and say, I'll Venmo you $10 right now to go leave my photo booth business a 5-star review, because I also have a photo booth business. And still half of them didn't do it because they're busy.
Yeah.
So like, I just look at a show that has 25-star reviews. I'm like, okay, they probably have 10 listeners for every 5-star review at a minimum.
Yeah.
So if they have 20, then they probably have like 200 listeners or something.
Yeah.
Beyond that, and even that, like, different industries have different metrics for that. Like, I worked with some people in the cannabis space. Some of the biggest shows in the cannabis space have no 5-star because their clientele is just not going to leave reviews. I've worked with people in the dental space. Same thing. They're just like, they're listening for education. They're not like going to, I don't know. It's just the different industries, value it differently.
Yeah.
So then beyond that, it's like, okay, just is the sound quality good? Do they have any social media following on any platform? Is it X or is it Instagram, or do they have subscribers on YouTube? And then just does the thumbnail art look good? Like, sometimes it doesn't. And that sucks, because when the interview comes out, you don't even want to share it on LinkedIn because the art looks like shit.
It's a serious detail.
I mean, I had a show that I worked with a lot of, that I sent a lot of people to in the beginning of me doing this. And I went to my fiance. I'm like, hey, could you download, or could you make like podcast art? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm going to go to this show and tell him that we're trying to build a portfolio of podcast art, and we're offering to do it for him for free because his art was awful. And I wanted to be able to continue sending clients to him, but I wanted them to feel okay actually promoting it. And so, funny enough, he didn't take that offer, but then redid his art because he must have taken the clue. But it was just like, I think his show does better now because people actually want to share it because the art doesn't look bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important detail too. I feel like a lot of people don't really think about. So
yeah, and look, podcasts are being started by people in all different phases of their lives, but also their understanding. So some people, it was just a grind setting up the RSS feed, and then they uploaded like a headshot as their thumbnail art. And they just don't even know that that's not really what it's supposed to be. But they got all of the rest of it done, that they kind of lapse on the following up detail,
Yeah.
That just happens. And so that is one big thing that, I look at is, does the art look good? Is the sound quality good? What do the reviews look like? And then I kind of put all that together, and then maybe I can say, okay, I think the show may have this many downloads, but that's kind of the process we go through. But ultimately what matters the most is that it's the right audience, and it's a show that actually, the client can actually put out some real content on.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So I'm curious as well, for new podcasters, what advice would you give someone who is in that position where they don't really know anything about it?
Yeah, I mean, be realistic about what tasks you should be taking on. Because this is not even if you're doing podcasting part-time, and it's just a small part of your marketing arm, are you best suited to be editing? Are you best suited to be marketing it? Are you best suited to design that thumbnail art? If you don't know anything about design, this is your first attempt, it's so easy to hire someone to make thumbnail art. Obviously, marketing is a more costly overhead expense, but there's so many things you could hire. There are plenty of podcast teams out there you can hire for a flat fee to get everything set up correctly, help you with the description, with that's calibrated for SEO and that type of thing, or provide some guidance. And so that's actually the other thing that my company does, is we also edit, distribute, and launch podcasts for people. We put out about 50 episodes a month. My fiance handles that side of the business. Because most people started on their own because it is a low barrier to entry, but they ultimately realize it's not where their time is best suited.
Mm-hmm.
And so offloading that to somebody else is usually, it might not be what they do at the very beginning, but you'll probably see greater benefit, if you can offload sooner rather than later.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really good point.
And studios like this that offer like an even better experience to, like, you can really step up your game by investing in something like Westchester Studios.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It definitely, it kind of breaks down that barrier, like, of I don't want to say like a learning curve, because it's not a learning curve, but like the barrier of entry, I guess you could say.
I mean, but it is a learning curve. Like, everything that goes into there's like, for the biggest shows, there's a single person that handles each individual aspect. Just copywriting, like just the show description. At some of these venture-backed podcasts, it's one person's job to handle titles. That's it. And description. And one person handles YouTube editing while the other person handles just audio editing. Like, that's obviously, most shows don't go that way, but that just goes to show you the people that really have the money to put into it recognize that like, one person shouldn't be doing multiple jobs unless they really have a good understanding of it.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, you are breaking down a learning curve for people, because otherwise they have to learn all of it.
Yeah. No, that is actually a very fair point. So I guess looking ahead too now, so where do you see like the podcast industry like heading for the next like 5 years, 5 years, 10 years, like just the general future of it?
Yeah. So as we mentioned earlier, video is going to continue to grow. As much as there is a lot of debate about what is a podcast and what isn't, I think that's going to just fall to the wayside. Like, owning your own platform or having your own stage is just becoming more and more important to people. And, like, whether that's a YouTube show or a podcast, I think to many people it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, if you love Michael Jordan and Michael Jordan launches a show on YouTube and he calls it a podcast, like, are you going to yell at him and be like, it's not a podcast, bro, it's a YouTube? Like, no.
Yeah, technically.
That's not like, they're just stoked. If people that like Michael Jordan just care that he's putting out content. So I think ultimately it's going to, it's just going to continue down that path. The waters of what's a podcast and what isn't are probably going to be muddied further, but ultimately it shouldn't matter. I think as long as people are putting out unique content, it can thrive. Like, when I started doing this in 2020, a lot of people are like, well, everybody has a podcast. And it's like, far more people that don't have a podcast than that do. So that's not true. But of the people that that did have a podcast, they might all kind of be doing the same thing, just asking questions of other people, these basic interviews. A lot of people have recognized that solo episodes do better for their business because they built an audience actually based on the host, not the guest. And they didn't realize that for 5 years. So solo episodes and solo podcasts are going to continue to take off a little bit more because they just see more capitalization on, like, their call to actions. More people sign up for their course or a consultation or whatever when they just do a solo episode versus an interview. But for that brand new person, borrowing someone else's platform and their audience is what helps them build their own audience.
Right.
And then I generally think that that people are just going to get more creative with, like, what is the concept. So, like, Mark Manson launched his podcast, and he was the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and then launched a podcast by the same name. And after a year of doing interviews, he's like, I feel like everyone kind of said the same thing they said on other interviews, so I don't want to do this anymore. Now he and his co-host dive in on a subject, anxiety. And their goal of the podcast episode, it's like 4 or 5 hours long, is to go through the whole history of research and, like, how it started off, what we understand today, et cetera, trends. And the goal of each episode is so that you never have to go look for another podcast episode on anxiety.
That's
Not
cool.
that it doesn't solve anxiety. It's just you never have to go look for another explanation, you know?
Mhm.
And so that's like, not many people are doing it like that. They do
Yeah.
a ton of research. They really understand what they're reading. They might interview experts on the side,
Mhm.
but they're not putting them on the show. They're then referencing them in the episode. And so that's really creative and unique, and most people aren't doing that. The other thing I think in the trends is like, we used to look to morning shows for
Mhm.
like Oprah, for example. YouTube and the podcast medium have made it so that like you don't have to rely on Oprah. You can not only build your own, but like every single person that's been on Oprah could now go start their own platform.
Mhm.
And so you kind of get that secondary level of credibility and like expert conversations from like, well, they were good enough to be on Oprah, so me talking to them should be good enough as well. And so that's why this medium has really exploded, is that it's given the opportunity to all of these thought leaders that were platformed by the biggest people to then go build their own platforms. And I think that's just going to continue.
Yeah.
I think being the host of a successful podcast is like way better than being an Amazon best-selling author.
Yeah.
If you can get on Wall Street, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But like, you don't really need it to have credibility anymore. You
Yeah.
can build your own platform that speaks for itself.
Yeah, that is a really good point and a great perspective too. So, this has been really enlightening, and even for like someone like me who like works in the industry as well, but kind of on a different like side of things.
Sure.
This has been like super cool to like hear the other side of it. So for our listeners, how can they find you or any of your work online?
Yeah, so company's called Outlier Audio. We are a podcast booking agency. We also do editing and distribution. And it's just outlieraudio.com. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. Actually, I spent all of yesterday scheduling out 2 months worth of content that was filmed here in the studio a few weeks ago. So every Tuesday and Thursday, I'm putting out a video. And so I've all of January and February, just content from here. So that content is with another podcast booking agent from the area. And we're just kind of diving into just kind of like what we did here, but
Mhm.
With another podcast booking agent who also was in PR. So active there. I'm also active on Instagram, but it's not like, I'm not talking about podcasting on my Instagram as much, but it's just my name, Spencer Carpenter. And yeah, that's LinkedIn, website, and Instagram.
Awesome. Spencer, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course.